Hello everybody! I hope you're all doing very well, and I hope that you enjoyed the full costume edition of Littleland. And thank you everybody who wrote me nice comments and sent me messages about my Yowie boy. I'm happy to report he's back from the vet. He was very sick. There was a point where it looked like he wasn't gonna make it. But then we got some good news. His blood tests came back from the lab and we found out that he has ingested a fungus which is called Cryptococcus, and it can really have a profound effect on the nervous system. They can get very, very sick and it can affect their internal organs. So with Yowie boy, it was causing his lungs to shut down. So they originally thought it was a tick, so they gave him a really hilarious haircut. This is what he looks like with no hair. I feel bad for laughing at my boy, but he looks hilarious. His head looks huge and the rest of him is just so small and hairless. And it looks like he's got furry boots on. So he was a very sick boy, but we brought him home. And he's going back next week to have a checkup with his vet, who is a really lovely lady and who really looked after him. We're not out of the woods yet because this fungus can cause problems to show up later. Like, the fungus can have a really profound effect on their organs. So hopefully his lungs will clear up. He's on 2 different antibiotics and an antifungal right now, and he really doesn't like taking his medicine, which is topical given what's about to happen in this chapter of Littleland. We're about to have chapter 13 of Littleland, in which Vanessa very much does not want to take her medicine. Vanessa spent the next hour in what can only be described as a mental frenzy until Miss Emily entered the playpen and noticed her facial expression. Vanessa was scooped from the playpen floor and bundled into Miss Emily's lap, where she was rocked and gently comforted until the doctor returned, sans Piper. Vanessa desperately wanted to inquire as to her whereabouts, but bit her tongue. Vanessa was transferred from one set of arms to another, and was promptly carried away from the nursery. "Okay, little one," said Dr. Gilbert softly. "It's time for your appointment." "I'm sorry," she whispered, with her face pressed into his chest. "I do not have ears in my chest, sweetheart," he said, smiling a dry smile down at her. Vanessa looked up in his direction and managed to return a small, pale imitation of his expression. "I'm sorry I tried to run away," she said. "That's very good, little one," said Dr. Gilbert. "I appreciate your apology." The doctor opened the door that led to the infirmary. It was a white room, sparklingly clean and smelling of fresh lemon disinfectant. Mickey stood at the opposite end of the room, washing some instruments in the sink. He gave a small wave as they entered. Vanessa, feeling very small indeed, timidly returned the gesture. Mickey's resultant smile was gentle and welcoming, and Vanessa felt slightly more at ease. The walls bore numerous paintings, many of which appeared to be handcrafted by previous attendees, lots of handprints and finger paintings. Light streamed into the room and pooled on various surfaces. The surface that most caught Vanessa's attention was a tall examination table, which she was placed upon. Vanessa forced her attention onto the doctor, who now had a clipboard and had seated himself upon a spinning stool. With one impossibly large booted foot, he kicked off the baseboard and slid over to where Vanessa sat. He made a note on his clipboard and jotted down some numbers that appeared on a nearby screen. "While we get you examined, you and I are going to have a conversation. Okay?" The doctor tilted his head and looked at her above his glasses. It was a well-practiced look that firmly compelled Vanessa to obey. "Okay," she said in a very small voice. "Okay," confirmed the doctor. "And you're going to be a good girl for Mickey and I, aren't you?" Vanessa nodded genuinely. Her fall from the tree had cured her of any urge to run or to misbehave. All that remained was remorse. Feeling as she did, she would submit to whatever ministrations the doctor and his assistant saw fit to dispense. "So," began the doctor, "do you remember what I told you this morning, young lady?" "Yes, sir," said Vanessa. Dr. Gilbert wrapped a cuff around her arm and began to take her blood pressure. "What did I ask you?" More notation as the cuff finished deflating and was removed. "To be a good girl for Mickey." "Exactly. And? Were you a good girl?" Vanessa looked in Mickey's direction. He looked up from the sink with his eyebrows raised. Vanessa's gaze dropped back to her hands, which were knotted in her lap. She shook her head. The doctor paused in checking her reflexes to fix her with yet another well-practiced look. "No," admitted Vanessa, aloud. "No," agreed Dr. Gilbert. "You ran away instead and did something very dangerous." Mickey finished at the sink and turned to face them, his face of a similar disposition to the doctor's. Neither of them looked angry with her, but this was of little comfort to Vanessa. The disappointment in their eyes seemed almost worse. Having finished checking the girl's reflexes, the doctor rose from his stool and began to listen to her heartbeat, first through her chest, then between her shoulder blades. Once finished, the doctor bade Vanessa lay down, and she obeyed. She was measured, and the numbers notated. "Why were you so scared to come see us, honey?" asked Mickey, passing instruments to Dr. Gilbert, who set them down upon a nearby tray. "We're lovely." Mickey's stern expression softened, and he grinned at her. The doctor gave Mickey a soft smile. "The doctor looks frightening, but really, he's not." "Speak for yourself, Michael," said Dr. Gilbert, circling to the other side of the examination table. "I shall have to remind you how frightening I can be. In fact, I think you're due for a nice long reminder." Vanessa's eyes widened. It hadn't occurred to her that if Mickey acted more as a big brother than as a caregiver, then this was the logical dynamic between Dr. Gilbert and himself. Vanessa looked at Mickey, surprised, an involuntary smile growing on her face. He groaned, but smiled, bashfully. "The secret's out," he said, tapping Vanessa on the nose. "I'll never be seen as an authority figure again." In spite of her remaining anxiety, Vanessa gave a little giggle at Mickey's melodramatic performance. He took Vanessa's hands and swung the small girl into a sitting position. She gave another involuntary giggle. "It is a valid question, though," spoke the doctor, reseating himself on the stool. "What about this appointment frightened you so?" the doctor asked in a low, earnest tone. I didn't want help," said Vanessa. "Help with what?" "Help to go, you know." "Is that your decision to make?" "Yes," said Vanessa, stubbornly. The doctor and Mickey both raised their eyebrows in surprise. "Yes," repeated Mickey. "Do you want to reconsider that answer?" he asked, amusedly. "It should be my decision." Perhaps," said the doctor, with a short incline of his head. "But for the next month, it is not your decision," he said, sharing a glance with Mickey. "It's ours." The doctor stooped down to Vanessa's eye level. "And if your tummy is hurting and you need some medicine," he began, "or if you've done something naughty and need some discipline," he paused to fix her with a referential expression, "we are going to be here to give it to you, as uncomfortable as that might be." A lump formed in Vanessa's throat. She attempted to swallow it to no avail. "It's time to take your medicine, little one," said the doctor, accepting a small bottle from Mickey. Despite her fear, Vanessa had experienced quite enough stern faces for that day, and was in no mood to disobey. Slowly and shakily, she moved to lay down upon the examination table. Vanessa whimpered as she reached with shaking hands to unclasp her overalls. The doctor paused and looked towards Mickey, who was stifling a grin for the second time that day. "Miss Vanessa, what are you doing?" Vanessa had unclasped the straps and rolled over onto her stomach by that point, her diapered bottom elevated. She buried her face in the crook of her elbow. "I know it's going to be butt medicine, so just get it over with," she mumbled, her words muffled by skin. Vanessa lay there with her teeth clenched, trembling. Then she heard something she'd not yet heard. The doctor was laughing. The impossibly composed, intimidating Gothic doctor was lost in gales of laughter. Within moments, Mickey had dissolved into mirth as well. Dr. Gilbert took a step forward and scooped Vanessa up from her brave position. He set her on her bottom and held the bottle up so she was able to read the label. "This one doesn't go in your bottom, sweetheart," he said, traces of laughter still in his voice. "You take it by mouth." Vanessa nearly collapsed with relief. You mean I don't have to have... But medicine, as you so eloquently put it. No, little miss, you don't. Still smiling, the doctor prepared a large spoonful of the clear, viscous liquid. Vanessa opened her mouth immediately, such was her relief. The liquid laxative was unpleasant in both texture and taste, but as much as Vanessa disliked the taste of imitation vanilla, she preferred it to the alternative. "Good girl," said Dr. Gilbert, smiling. "So much fuss over a little spoonful of medicine." His face grew stern. As the appointment had progressed, the anxiety of a doctor's visit had been replaced with anxiety over that morning's misbehaviour. Vanessa couldn't believe she'd done something so careless to avoid this visit. She'd put herself and her friends in danger. She'd fallen from a tree. She'd caused everyone a great deal of worry, just to avoid a fate that hadn't even been destined to befall her. The guilt swelled in her chest, heavy and bitter. Soon she would have to face Miss Mia. The guilt grew heavier. She pictured her caregiver's face, creased with worry and looking down upon her, a mask of displeasure. "I'm sorry," she said. "I'm sorry I ran away." "Thank you, little one. But there will be time for that in just a moment." Vanessa nodded solemnly. More words longed to pour from her mouth, but she kept her jaw clamped firmly shut. "So, doctor, what's the prognosis?" asked Mickey in an exaggerated show of faux seriousness. "How is our little patient?" "She seems in good health, Michael," said Dr. Gilbert, removing his gloves and tossing them into a nearby bin. "You mean it? She's going to live?" asked Mickey, comically. "I do believe she will," said the doctor, giving Mickey a fond smile. "In that case, goodbye, my little patient," said Mickey, brightly, removing his own gloves and slipping something into Dr. Gilbert's hand. The doctor instinctually slipped it into his pocket. "Goodbye?" asked Vanessa, in genuine surprise. She looked between the two towering men. "It's over?" "It's over," nodded Dr. Gilbert, as Mickey hummed his affirmation. "It wasn't that bad, was it?" In truth, no. It hadn't been that bad. In fact, it hadn't been bad at all. The worst part had been the cloying taste of thick vanilla, which by now had dissipated from her tongue. "No," said Vanessa, sheepishly, her shame and guilt deepening. There'd been no cause for panic. She hadn't needed to cause so much fuss, and yet she had. It wasn't bad. Vanessa could feel it. She was being delivered to her guardian, and she'd be immediately hauled over that big maternal lap that she simultaneously loved and feared. Feeling guilty as she did, Vanessa almost welcomed it. She deserved a spanking. Down the hall went Dr. Gilbert, cradling Vanessa close. With every step she made peace with her fate. By the time the two arrived at their destination, Vanessa had resolved to show the utmost grace and decorum when Miss Mia warmed her backside. She wouldn't kick or cry. She would be brave and take the spanking she deserved. Vanessa's resolve dissipated as soon as the doctor placed her down and shut the door behind him. He crossed to the single chair and made himself seated. "Now then, let's finish our conversation." I hope you like chapter 13. I'll see you guys on Thursday with a random other stuff video. Ooh, get keen. Be there. thank you for watching. If you liked this video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you want to see more of my stuff that I do and more stories and diaper reviews and other random stuff that just happens to take my fancy. Bye everybody.